While some of the vocations might hit a little bit harder or be a little bit more magical in Dragon's Dogma 2, the Thief vocation, combined with the build we're about to talk you through, is quicker, smarter, and deadlier than almost any other we've dabbled with so far. I took the rather dramatic switch of going from the warrior vocation to the thief in my playthrough and became immediately enamoured with the speed of the vocation. And not just on the attack. Since thieves are blessed with one of the only readily accessible dodge abilities in the game, I have a habit of going with the dexterous troublemaker builds in pretty much every action RPG I play, but that tendency has been massively rewarded in Dragon's Dogma 2. The Thief is one of the best vocations that you can pick in the game, offering lightning fast speed and high damage potential, and much of the Thief's strengths come from the combination of its skills. You can't just rely on pure weapon damage like the warrior or the fighter, which actually makes it one of the more interesting and fun vocations to mess around with in the game. Sure, the Thief is quite susceptible to incoming damage, although not as much as vocations like Mage and Sorcerer, and Thieves come equipped with plenty of tools to counter this vulnerability, with the main one being the Swift Step dodge ability. This quickly shifts your Arisen out of the way of any incoming attacks, keeping you safe from damage and often opening up an attack opportunity as well. So that's my pitch. Still interested? Throughout my playthrough, I mastered a build that dealt perfectly with even the biggest of beasts, so here is the best Thief build in Dragon's Dogma 2. On screen, you're going to see a summary of exactly everything you need to make this build pop, so feel free to pause the video here, peruse, get an idea of everything you're going to need to collect, and let me break down the how and why of it all. This build is just about the perfect combination for dealing with large monsters and standard enemies alike. For standard enemies, you'll want to use Implicate to throw them off balance, and then climb on them with Twin Fangs to perform a deadly stab. You can also use Ignited Blades to set fire to your weapons and add a flash of fire damage to your attacks. Burning your enemies is never a bad option after all. Where this build excels though is fighting many of the larger mythical creatures that you can encounter in the open world. The speed of the vocation will allow you to jump quickly onto any creature's back, aided by core skills like Footpad, and then you'll want to use Gut and Run on its weak spot to deal massive amounts of damage. Climbing onto the biggest beasts is pretty much the best way to take them down, and the Thief is the best vocation hands down for taking advantage of this mechanic, with the highest dexterity to make it to weak points and a number of ways to rack up the highest of damage numbers. While our weapon of choice initially, Spite, isn't the strongest weapon from a pure damage standpoint, it suits this build perfectly because it gets a poisonous side effect that almost always procs when using Gut and Run. This can melt an enemy with ease and is so strong when dealing with the multiple health bars of bigger enemies. Once you're further along in the game though, you'll want to purchase Heaven's Key. It deals significantly more damage and has its own set of elemental effects to boost its attacks further. For augments, you'll want to borrow ones like Metal and Vitality from other vocations, which largely increase your defense and health. Like I said before, the Thief's main weakness is its lack of ability to take a punch, and stealing a few boosts from other vocations fits the Thief lifestyle if nothing else. From the Thief's own augments though, Poise is easily the most important for this build. It decreases stamina drain when your Arisen is desperately trying to stay attached to the back of a pissed off dragon, letting you stay on longer and snag more of those all important weak spot stabs. Finally, while the Ring of Profusion just lets you ease the burden of your carry weight, a constant problem when, if you're anything like me, you're compelled to pick up absolutely everything you come across, the Ring of Skullduggery increases damage when attacking foes from behind, which is especially strong combined with skills like Swift Step, which allow you to quite easily reposition around the backs of enemies and crack them where they can't see. Speaking of skills, I'm just going to pop some of my favourites for this build on the screen again for you, because there are a couple of options you can play around with that still make this kind of approach work. Obviously, most of them are included in the best build summary I put up earlier, but both Powder Blast and Concussive Step can easily be switched in for Skull Splitter and Ignited Blades. They switch the focus away from burn damage and melee hits to going heavy on explosives, which are effective at dealing high damage to targets and giving you a bit of space to breathe. Implicate and Draw and Quarter are two essential weapon skills for any Thief build though. Implicate especially is very effective against many of the smaller targets that you'll run into on your travels, throwing them off balance and making for easy pickings for you or your pawns to clean up. Masterful Kill is also super strong and is a fantastic option for dealing with pretty much any standard enemy you might meet. It just takes a little bit of skill to pull off, so a bit of practice might be required, but the reward is more than worth the risk. And finally, let's have a brief chat about weapons. Again, I'll show them on screen so you can write them down if you need to. My own personal preference for most of the game were the Spite Daggers, as the chance to poison an enemy is a huge bonus to have in your locker. With enhancements, it can more than hold its own despite being naturally weaker in numbers than some of the other weapons. That said, Heaven's Key is undoubtedly the best once you can afford it, and it clears most other weapons in the game. You can also unlock the Dragon's Daggers once you've accumulated enough Worm's Life crystals, and they're incredibly strong too, but in terms of the overall build, weapons is probably the area where you have the most room for experimentation and personal preference. So go for whatever daggers make you feel good. So there you go, the best thief build in Dragon's Dogma 2, at least as far as we can tell. Let us know what you make of the build down in the comments, or if you have any tweaks, we'd love to hear those too. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more Dragon's Dogma 2 guides like this, because we have plenty on the way. And while you're with us here at GG Recon, YouTube has carefully selected the perfect video for you, so why not check that out just here.